It's time to get on and repair this one, the Roland S-50. So now the weather's getting a little bit warmer, it's time to start getting on with the repairs that we need to do. And this is another one of those, very much like the EPS 16 that I've actually had for probably about 4 years, I suppose. I've probably had this keyboard, and I've used it intermittently via MIDI because some notes on the keyboard don't work. So for argument's sake, that one and that one and that one don't work. So there's a number of jobs that I need to get on and do with this particular keyboard to bring it back to rude health. And a lot of you are probably saying, why do I want to bring the S50 back to rude health? Well, the thing about using old samplers, I keep saying sequencers, the thing about using old samplers is they have kind of a tonal quality that modern samplers can't really emulate. Modern samplers are all about hi-fi, and 80s samplers and early 90s samplers are kind of all about lo-fi. And it's that lo-fi sound that sort of brings into sort of like kind of that soul funk era of the 80s and 90s that I really, really loved. So that's why I'm bringing this particular keyboard. I'm going to try and bring this particular keyboard back to life. But let's go into a little bit of history of the keyboard itself. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. So the Roland S-50 was the first of the Roland S-series samplers. Roland kind of came to the sampling game a little bit after a number of other manufacturers, and at this point manufacturers were trying to bring the cost of sampling down to an affordable level that the semi-pro musician could afford. There were samplers out there. There was the emulator, the CMI, or this Fairlight CMI, this Enclavier, a number of other high-profile brands that were launched in the early 80s. But you had to take a mortgage out on your house to buy one, whereas this particular keyboard came in at $2,700 when it was launched in 1986. And it was actually seen as a fairly good all-round sampler at the time. It has 750k kilobytes, that is, not megabytes, kilobytes of memory, and 2 banks of sample memory that could be used, giving you effectively 7.2 seconds sampling at 30 kilohertz, which is not quite CD quality, but it was kind of good enough. The machine itself operates on a 12-bit sampling rate, so you could do quite a lot with this. And the other side of this is that you could play 16 voices simultaneously, so it was quite a good all-rounder. Basically, it was a fraction of the cost of the other big boys out there. It was slightly more, well, say slightly more expensive. Ensoniq had launched the Mirage a couple of years earlier. This keyboard came out about $1,000 more than the Mirage, and the Mirage had already started to make headway into this market. Now, the one thing about this keyboard that kind of makes it stand out from the samplers of the era is the fact that on the back of this keyboard, and you've seen me use this keyboard before on the channel, and you know that you can actually have this keyboard plugged into a CRT or a flat screen monitor. I use it with a couple of flat screen monitors I have up on the shelf here, and it gives you access to all the features that are on the keyboard, but you don't need a monitor to use it. You can actually run everything from this vacuum tube display that this thing has TFT screens hadn't made it onto samplers at this point. The next generation of this kind of sampler was the W30. People will say, yes, but you've got other S series. Yes, yeah, I know, but the W30 really was the workstation that took over from the S50, and that did have a TFT display on it. So they this was the last of the kind of vacuum screen displays. The JX8P, which was the keyboard, the big sort of synthesizer that came out around this time, was also vacuum tube display. So that was kind of the thing, the vacuum tube display. What I would say is, if you are going to go and buy yourself an S series sampler, for God's sake, don't try to use the panel. While I say every function can be used from the panel, and it can, don't try and use it. You will thank me for saying don't use it. Plug a TFT in the back, and you can get SCART converters to HDMI, which is what I would recommend, and then you can plug it into any modern TV screen, whatever it happens to be. Along with this came the DT100, and I have a DT100. It's just off screen. I actually brought it back from storage. I'm not going to get it out because it's a bit pointless at this point, but there is the DT100, still in its original box. Just put that back over there. You could, it made you feel like, you know, the dog's doodahs, big screen, DT100, little light pen, you could draw on the screen, and you could do all kinds of stuff. Honestly, the DT100 is more of a gimmick than a help, but I will do a video about the DT100. I've been promising to do that for a while. There were a couple of really interesting modes in here. You have normal mode, which is just plays the sample, press the key, plays the sample. You can have a velocity mode, which basically the harder you press the key, it transitions from one sample to another. And you can also have an crossfade mode, which is when you press the key, it does the transmission based on some sort of timing sequence. They were really interesting features. You can get some really interesting effects out of that. If you buy one of these things with version 1.0, get shot of it as soon as possible. You need the 2.0, I think it's 2.3 is the latest operating system for this thing. Get a hold of a copy of that. If you need a copy of that, follow the link at the bottom in the description for discs, because I've got a media replacement disc there, which is the latest. They've been going out the door quite a lot at the moment, so you know, just bear in mind. 2.0 improved the operating system quite a lot in terms of around the MIDI and being able to map MIDI channels to tones, so you could play separate tones. You could play back 16 voices simultaneously, which was made more stable by 2.0, and you could also assign the tones to the outputs on the back of this. It has 4 assignable outputs, and with 1.0 you couldn't do that. So they released a keyboard with assignable outputs, but you couldn't actually assign anything to the outputs because the operating system couldn't support it. So there you go. I think, you know, that kind of is the sort of the big key thing about this. At the same time this was launched, Roland also launched the S10 and the MKS 100, which was roughly very, very similar. Could sample at 30 and 15 kilohertz, total of 8 seconds sampling time. But for some unknown reason, they put the 2.8 quick disc format on it, which at the moment, you know, if you're trying to get hold of a 2.8 quick disc, you won't get one for love nor money. So, you know, to me, I have been offered an S10 a couple of times, and I've turned it down because it kind of is useless without being able to get hold of discs. I mean, at least with this is 800. Well, it's actually technically it's the 720 double-sided, double-density 3.5-inch floppy, which this thing takes. Which you can get hold of. They're getting rarer and rarer, but you can get hold of them. Whereas the S10 was this 2.8 quick disc format, which is nigh impossible to get hold of nowadays. A year after this came out, Roland released the S-550, which was meant to be the rack mount version of the S-50, but actually is a superior model. I do have an S-550. It's actually in quite good condition, and it's in storage, so there are some videos to do there. The key differentiators were double memory, mouse options, SCSI interface, and the time variant filter. Were all built into the S-550. And at the same time that the S-550 arrived on the scene, Roland released a software package called Director S that gave this sequencer and the S-550 and the S-330 sequencing capabilities. So it sort of came into line with what some of the other manufacturers were offering at the time. The Mirage had a sequencer. The EPS that came out a couple of years after this had a sequencer. So you know, it kind of got this into the same sort of area. But of course, Director S wasn't free. You had to pay for it, and it was, I can't remember how much it was now, but you would probably part with $100 or so, maybe more dollars, I'm not sure, to get the S500, the Director S, and you couldn't copy it, because what Roland did rather cleverly is they put a dongle that you plug into the mouse socket of this, well, you plug into the what looks like the mouse socket. It's not the mouse socket, but you plug it into that particular extension socket, I think they call it on the S50. Hang on. Yeah, they call it the extension controller socket, should I say. Get the terminology right. And effectively it was like a USB, what's the USB dongles that we've been used to in previous years, to stop you, like an iLock for Pro Tools, that stops you being able to use the software if you haven't got the dongle plugged in. Same difference. Anyway, that's a quick rundown of this particular keyboard. So now we've got to get on to what's wrong with it. I alluded to at the end of this video that some of the keys are dead. So I've already written on two of the keys here. This one is dead and that one is dead. I haven't written on an impermanent marker, by the way, so I can just wipe that off. And this key is intermittent. So there's three keys here that either there's something wrong with the membrane that's underneath it, or there's something wrong with the contacts. I'm not sure which, because I haven't yet. I've had it, as I say, a number of years, probably about 4 years, and I haven't actually taken it to pieces, which is very unusual for me, but it was kind of where my life was. I've got all these projects that have kind of built themselves up. I did a video earlier today about the N-Sonic, because I'm going to be doing these two projects together effectively as parts arrive. I've had to order parts for this and the N-Sonic from all over the shop. I can't just get them in Europe, so some of the parts have had to come from the US and some of the parts are coming from the Far East. It just shows you how difficult it is to get hold of parts for some of these legacy keyboards. The good thing about this unit is the disk drive is in completely rude health. So what I will do with the disk drive is I will have a look at the disk drive. If it needs a bit of clean, I'll give it a clean, but I'm not actually going to do an awful lot with the disk drive itself. So that's a good piece, because I haven't had to do that. The N-Sonic that I had on the bench earlier on and open earlier on, the disk drive is banjaxed, so I've had to order a new one of those. The vacuum tube display works intermittently. So I suspect I've got a loose connection somewhere there. So that's one of the projects that we need to look at, is how do we make that work. And what I'm going to do is, it's got a bit scratched. It was a bit scratched when I got it. It's not in bad condition, but there's a couple of nasty marks on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get hold of some plastic polish, and I'm going to gently buff that back in, buff those marks out with a cutting agent, and then polish them up with the plastic polish to bring this screen back to how it should be. Now, somebody has also at some point done the upgrade to the later version of the operating system, because these buttons here did slightly different things on the earlier operating system, and of course now with the later operating system they've changed. So this is probably an earlier version of the synth that was upgraded at some point. The other thing I've noticed on this is that certain keys, so every time you want to do something on this keyboard, what you have to do is you have to press shift and then enter, because shift is saying do you want to do this? Effectively locking the command in, and then it enter executes the command. And that key, and I think it's P6, is a bit ropey. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to just replace the lot in terms of the tack switches that sit underneath them. It's not economical just to replace tack switches that are broken. You might as well do the lot in one go. Yes, it does take a while to desolder them and resolder the tack switches in, but then you know all the tack switches are going to work. Otherwise, what tends to happen is you solder new tack switches in and then other tack switches start to fail. So I'd rather do the whole thing in one hit. So that's another job that we're going to do. The third job, third or fourth job, I'm not sure where we are now. Another job that needs to happen is when this machine switches on, and like a number of pieces of professional audio equipment, what they've done on the audio board is they put a relay. So when you switch the machine on, it doesn't actually connect the audio outputs immediately. The audio outputs are connected at some point within a few seconds. The Roland MKS-20 is also a machine where this happens, and I've got the spare parts for fixing that problem as well. But on this machine there is a relay. It is notorious apparently for breaking and putting distortion on the outputs. So I'm going to replace that relay with parts that I've ordered from the US. It's a fairly simple modification, but that modification will fix the output problem on this machine. You can no longer get the relay that is in this machine, so there's a mod you have to do to actually put a modern variant of that relay in. So that's that. Other than that, I think most things on this keyboard I've tested and are good. And the final thing I will do, restoring this, apart from the fact it needs a jolly good clean, is I'm going to put a new battery in it. So just as a standard thing, I'm assuming it has a battery in it, but I'm just going to put a brand new battery in it. If it has, like I do when I do all my keyboards, I put brand new batteries in them, and then I know how many years roughly that battery will sit in the machine. So that's kind of the work we're going to do. As I say, it's thoroughly filthy. It needs a good clean. And I've been playing this, but I've been playing it through another keyboard, using another keyboard as the master. I tend to use the D70 as the master keyboard when I'm playing this thing. But I really should get this back properly cleaned, properly working, and then I will start using it a bit more. So there you go. That's the stuff that's going to be done to this machine. Look out for the videos over the next few weeks, because stuff will start to arrive, and as stuff starts to arrive, I will be fixing this as the same as I'm going to be fixing the N-Sonic machine, and get these two great samplers back to full operation. The other thing I may do to this, actually, funny, I'm just thinking about it, is I may recap the power board. Once I get in and have a look at the power board, which is up this end of the keyboard, I will have a look at the capacitors and see where I think they're on their way. If somebody hasn't already done it before. I don't think somebody has done it before, but yeah, there's always hope. But if somebody has been and recapped the power board, then I may just leave it alone. But the likelihood, I think, where I'm thinking at the moment, is I'll probably just recap the power board, and then I'll give the other capacitors on the audio board a very good looking at. I tend not to recap audio boards unless I have to. Power boards I do as a matter of routine, because power boards take the brunt of the power, and if the capacitors are likely to go, it tends to be on the power board rather than the audio boards. But it's not unheard of for the audio boards to go as well. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to say live long and prosper. Watch out for the other videos that are going to happen on this. They will all be going into the S-50 playlist. So there's that. And if you do want operating system disc or library disc media replacement, check out the link below. Bye bye. bye.